is working alongside people, liaising, being a colleague, being a confidant and everything like that, so
BMW, can you say it again for the people in the back?
well, just being everything.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
This is
You know, it,
awesome.
but it, but and that was the point of why I wanted to reach out, because I think that for someone like yourself and Brad Hightower, just a lot of mutual people that we know, I think that you guys are the shapeshifters in the industry, because I think that what's happening is through people like yourself, people are really getting a good gist of like how great our profession is. And I think that you have long been a champion of being the voice of sites. And I've been in this industry long enough to where, at one point in time, the sites were kind of they were, I don't want to say it purposely, but they were viewed as like the middlemen, in between, vendors and CROs and of course the sponsor. And now I think because of, things like Save Our Sites and just, the books that you put out, the time that you take to help people not only learn about our industry, because I mean, you can do that through SOCRA and ACRP and the Drexel courses, but really giving a true sense of what it's like to be at a site and really embrace the site dynamic. I mean, when you look at sites, and you and I talked about this during our last podcast about how like the place where my clinical research experience originated from, Siegel Institute, was like kind of like the blueprint of like
Yep.
the, I don't know if power is the right word, but the strength that sites really have with respect to really helping clinical sites be successful. Because of course, as monitors, your job is to adhere to protocols and subject safety, and then the sponsor, their role is pronounced, um, with overseeing the study. But the site really, it's always like, oh well, we'll just go to this site because they're consistently a high enroller or whatever else. And I think that what you have really championed is, wait a minute, like we're more than just places that can get you patients on a cardiology study. We're people that are also an important part of helping people, whether it's in a cardiology trial or one of my specialties, immuno-oncology, where
Mm.
the cancer statistically are not good, and being able to take a situation where you're collaborating with your sponsors, your CROs, your sites, and most importantly the patients who are choosing to participate in these studies, and say, we're going to help with putting you in a scenario where what you've been coping with, what you've been dealing with, is something where we have something where the hope is that we take something that is traditionally fatal and make it more manageable or more chronic. Or I know in some of the more recent things that you've posted, just the things with like rare disease, and
Yeah.
things like that. So this was just more about, I know that you give a lot of time to people like myself and people that are new to the industry, people that are OGs. And I just wanted to, take this time to give you, and like I said, people like Brad Hightower, Dr. Hazen, and
Oh,
people that
Hazen.
doing this for a long time,
You're
to
going
give you
deep in
guys
the
your
bag with
flowers.
Hazen. Thank
Yeah,
you. But you as
yeah,
well, man.
and
I look, I talk to enough people that come across you. So this is Damian Hall, everybody. By the way, every time we come on, it's a classic. Damian Hall, you as well, man. I know you're mentoring behind the scenes and you may not always be front and center posting things on LinkedIn, but you're out there. You're a force to be reckoned with, man. I've come across dozens of people just in the
preach.
last 2 years, like since our last podcast, that said, "Oh,
Yeah,
Damien sent me to you. Damien's awesome. He's a mentor, North American clinical ops leader." This is, you've been doing this for 20 plus years, man. So kudos to you.
yeah. And and again, and I think that one of the things that we're learning is that research is evolving. I mean, like I think you and I talked on our last podcast, like we've been doing this long enough to where you had like the big binders, and you had like all the color coded CRF pages, and you had to tear this one this way, fold it in a paper airplane, and fly to data management that way, to now where we're literally using like just in time research, where people are making very important decisions based on data. And so again, I think that what you and so many others are doing is really helping like shape the industry. I think that you're often now finding like people, sponsors, even sites and CROs that are not even, and I won't say, and this is not to negate degrees or anything like that, but people who have like ambition and have passion. And I think, for me, I was just talking to one of, my mentors who actually was one of my managers at Siegel Institute. And anytime I make a slight progression in this research stuff, I always make a point to not only reach out, but reach back and help people because at one point in time, I was that person and I never forget that. And I think that again, one of the reasons why I reached out about this particular podcast is I noticed that you are really talking about the art of like collaboration and the art of like empathy, and not like empathy like where you feel sorry or you feel sad for people, not that type of empathy, but the empathy in people, their why. I think that you're finding more and more people choosing our industry because, they've been personally affected by someone who's
Yes.
had congestive heart failure, or like I said, in oncology. I mean, I don't know anybody who has not directly or indirectly been affected by oncology. As a matter of
Yes.
fact, one of my personal like crusades is to really work with those who are in that field because it took my mother and it's taking my father. So I think that what you're finding is that, like, again, through LinkedIn and introducing people to you, and people just watching your podcast, people watching you on social media, because I didn't realize too that like that you do a lot on like social media, like not just LinkedIn but like Instagram and other things. And people are like, oh wow, you know him, like wow, like he's insta famous and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that's my guy. And and I think that by you building these collaborative networks, it becomes infectious. And I think that, again, you're seeing these things resulting in more people wanting to learn about clinical research. And I think that you're taking some of the past pain points of clinical trials and making it to where people really want to be part of the change instead of some of the old stigmas about subjects and that type of stuff. So again, when I reached out, this was just more or less just to say like, you know you're doing is just fantastic, because people are now wanting to be part of their healthy changes, or they want to be part of working on breakthrough designation cures and things like that. So it's pretty pretty
Yeah.
pretty cool to be able to say like, yeah, that's my guy.
Thank you for all that. It's a small industry, but it's big in the sense of like the money that flows through this is insane to think about. But the industry doesn't do enough to foster like a helping hand. Hey, you're someone with potential. I think it boils down to the sites. It boils down to people like you that have their own things going on that are able to do that. One of the things that working for yourself does is it buys you freedom. Freedom, you don't need to ask permission. Like, imagine working at a CRO and you want to mentor someone. Like, how many people do you have to ask for permission? And there's always a way, but we got to be careful as an industry as we consolidate. I mean, sites are consolidating as tech streamlines everything. We don't want to lose the human element, which makes everything a little more, I guess, easily digestible. And the tech's not going to help people get in. The tech's not going to help answer people's questions of, is this a good career for me? Like, that boils down to people like me and you, and the more people we can help get started, the more it trickles down to the patients at the end of the day who need the help. And the answer is not in the big academic medical centers. I think it's as consolidation makes everything bigger, I think the antithesis is small community based. Like, we don't have red tape. We don't need to ask permission. You just do what you think is right. And if someone else thinks they can do it better, go do it also. The market will decide, and we're not competing. Like, it's really the industry versus the long tail. which is everyone else.
Yeah. And so that poses a question. So, where do you see, clinical trials heading? Because, obviously you bring up, AI and things like that. And it's been such a game changer for good, bad, or indifferent. But I do
Yep.
agree that there's nothing that can replace like this, the personal connections that you have. And so, as somebody who, has been doing this for, such a long time and has seen, the changes, because I do think that sometimes it's interesting because in our industry changes are both slow and are both radical, at the same time. And so like, for someone who has really been a champion of like, patience and sites, like how do you feel we can maximize these things but also like minimize the fact of like becoming like professional robots, and deferring to AI for everything.
Yeah, we don't want that. That's dangerous. That's a dangerous place. Understand that it's a tool first, and that's it. And ever
Mm,
since humans went from hunter-gatherers to agriculture to feudalism to industrial, now it's information. It's only been like in recorded history, like four transitions. This is the fifth, right? And we're
mhm,
going from industrial to informational, where education's less valued. But knowing how to use these tools, data is more valuable. So it's understand it's a tool first, understand that you augment humans with it so you can theoretically do more, but you're not replacing, like I said, that human touch because theoretically this is supposed to make everything more efficient. But I was talking to a VC guy yesterday about this exact thing, okay? Whenever you have technological advancements, you're creating problems you never had to worry about before. So everyone's been working on activation timelines. How do we get sites activated quicker? Which is understandable. Boom, we figured out how to do it. Now we can get patients. We're almost at the point where we can get patients scheduled at the site passively. Like coordinator tells them, "Hey, I can do 3 screenings a day. Here's my calendar, just book them." Patients
mhm,
show up, right? So patient accrual, patient screening, enrollment is taken care of. Not yet, but pretty soon. Now it's left to retention, right? And that's a human aspect, I think. But this is creating new problems because now sponsors are looking at this and saying, okay, we can get studies activated quicker. We can get accrual quicker. Why not go from 18 months of this trial to 12 months? Sounds good, right? Well, what happens when you run out of coordinator? We're already at a staff shortage. What happens when you run out of coordinators? You just give them more work, and AI is not really doing anything on the quality side. I mean, they're helping monitors monitor a little more efficiently, but not really. So everything's speeding up, but we're not taking care of we're creating other things, which is gonna be the bottlenecks always gonna boil down to human beings, coordinators interacting with patients, and then CRAs, boots on the ground at sites. Like those, if we take it down to first principles, these are the two like fundamentals of our industry that I don't think anyone thinks those two roles are being replaced anytime soon. So all you're doing is making everything else more efficient and putting more burden on these two stakeholders, which are historically the ones that get treated the worst. I mean, coordinators and CRAs. Like the way these CROs treat CRAs now, it's better because everyone's public about it. But before, like you and I both know, they didn't give a damn. I just interviewed someone who was a CRA in 2010. She told them at the interview, "Look, I'm willing to travel, but I need 2 weeks notice." They called her on the weekend, "Hey, we need you Monday at this time." "No, I can't. I have a newborn." "Well, we don't care." Right? Like that's the way it's always been. It probably would still be that way if it wasn't for LinkedIn and social peer pressure, and now things get out faster. But we got to take care of these two stakeholders. And this is what I'm talking about, not losing sight of the human element, because the tech's going to make us get better, more efficient, everything. But the work still got to get done. At the end of the day, algorithms can't do the work for you. Like I use ChatGPT. ChatGPT ChatGPT tries to cut corners all the time. If you don't
mm,
watch it, it actually behaves like a human. Like I have it transcribe audio a lot, and I
Hmm.
say turn this into an article. What it does is it doesn't transcribe my audio. It just takes those concepts and Googles what's out there and makes its own idea. And that's not what I want. I want you to use more of your GPUs to actually do what I asked. So it's not
Yeah.
the answer to everything, right? It's just it's boils down to human beings still understanding the nuances better. And the industry is doing a horrible job at it. And this is why it's important people like you, like me, the ones you mentioned, SOS, we need more grassroots movements. The more you can do, the better.
And I think that to your point, I think that there's another element that we almost take for granted, and kind of to your point about the overburdening of sites and monitors, and even and look, you could even make the argument that sometimes that the pressure from sponsors, that it causes a downward effect even with CROs. But I think quality is another tenet that we just always assume is there. And kind of to your point, with the condensing of things, and yet like the overburdening, usually when you do that, 12 times out of 10 something's going to suffer, and that is always going to be quality in some form, whether it's
Yeah.
from a site perspective, whether it's the quality of their documentation, or as a former monitor, the quality in your reports, and from a different purview. I think that as great as technology is, that it's almost like being a calculator, right? Like the calculator is only as good as the information that you put into it. And so I
Yeah.
think that with quality, I think that it's something that we always have to keep in mind, because again, tech stuff, you can do a lot of things faster, but is the efficiency that we're aiming for, is it the efficiency that we're really getting when it comes to how we use some of
Yeah.
the AI and the chat GPTs and stuff like that. So
And
I
look,
have a morning argument all the time with Alexa, because I'll ask her to play Earth, Wind, and Fire, and she'll play like earth tones or something, like, you know what I mean? It's a valid point. And so, for me, one of the reasons why, I follow your podcast and stuff like that is because, as you mentioned, currently I am a North American clinical operations manager at Novatech. And, we are an APAC CRO that is really expanding to, North America. And the one thing that you learn, and kind of to the point of like why I think the human element is so important, is unlike most professions, there is not necessarily a right or a wrong way to get into our industry. I still remember when people would say like, "Oh, I got into clinical research by accident," kind of deal. And I think that what you're seeing is that, and I'm sure you see this as well from the site level, and just, from CRO and sponsor, so on and so forth, is that candidates nowadays, they may not have the traditional science background. And so, how you can't manage people the same way. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you have to really learn your people more than you did before, because all like everybody had to have the science background, or you had to be, everyone was going through like the PPD training or the MedPace training or the icon training. So it was kind of, there was a system. But now, you're finding people like, I mean, on LinkedIn now they have like a clinical research kind of course, and on Coursera they have, clinical research courses. So people are finding unique ways to get in our industry. And so, what, at least for me, what you see sometimes is, I guess it's a twofold scenario. One is you have somebody that was a senior CRA at, CRO ABC, but then when they come to you, they're almost more junior because,
yep.
they were in a CRO where their metrics, if you will, were based on, how many studies they could take before they cracked, kind of deal.
That was the way. That was the old school way. And quite honestly, until this recent wave of layoffs, it hasn't really changed. I mean, you and I both know people that have recently quit well, before the layoff trend,
Hmm.
quit the CRO, went on to sponsors, especially these bigger CROs. At the sponsors, it tends to be like slightly better quality of life. I mean, they appreciate the science more. They're obviously, that's their core competency, whereas CROs are more management. CROs are like allocating resources for efficiency and allocating resources obviously for their bottom line, whereas sponsors are looking at it as let's invest in our IP. That means hiring people that believe in the mission. It's a higher vibration, for lack of a better word. But that doesn't mean it's not, you can't run a CRO the right way. You just have to keep these core elements in mind. Like people are not machines. Like we have machines now. We're in the information age. We're gonna have the machines, but you know what machines will never do, in my opinion? I don't think in our lifetime, motivate you. Hey Damien, man, I know like this site's a pain in the ass, but I really appreciate if you get out there and like clean it up because if not you, man, the FDA is gonna come out there and then we all lose, right? We all are gonna lose if that happens. So like let's work as a team. If you need something, I can help you. Machine's never gonna do that in our lifetimes, man. Even when Elon makes that Tesla bot that walks around and, you know, is in the same form as us, it's not gonna be the same thing.
Yeah, it's true. And I, again, I just really am grateful that there are people like yourself that are really keeping this in the forefront because again, it's easy to create a chat bot that, can perform these tasks. But, again, the human element is something that I think in the midst of e-consenting and things like Vestigo, where, you know, with pharmacies where literally they really literally compute everything. I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, what we do is it's community shaping. It is very informative. I saw that you'd also just published the FDA's guidance on diversity. I mean, you think about that happening in 2024 when and it's interesting because I know that there was, and I don't know if it was you, but there was somebody that had posted something about a case, I think with a pharma company where they had to pay, like, I don't know if it was like the state of Hawaii or people that participated in a clinical trial in Hawaii. There was something about where there were people who took a drug based on I guess, on a diagnosis, and it was failing them. And I guess when they went to look back, they saw that like a group of ethnic people had not participated in the trial, and therefore they weren't represented and
Right.
stuff like that. So I'll go back and look, but I know that there was something with people from the Aloha State. So
Yeah. And that's for like a small relatively small percentage of the US population. But when you get into African Americans and Latino Americans, the
yeah.
two largest minority groups, I mean, there's a way more chance of something like that happening at some point as well. And what's AI really going to do? I mean, if AI can make a coordinator's job easier, you have all these investments into study startup, timelines, recruitment, you see biz dev investments. You don't see investments in the quality, like, hey, let's make sure that protocol is being followed. Like, there's tools CROs and sponsors use, but at the site level, because sites won't pay for it. Neither will sponsors because sponsors think that's the CRA's job. So
Yeah.
it all boils down to like, where does the money go? The money like outcomes happen when people put their money into it. That's why we're seeing DE&I improvements little by little
Yeah.
because money's being invested into it. For 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, we're just talking about it. No one's investing. So I think with this, ultimately, these issues are going to happen on the quality side, and we'll have new problems, new investors coming in, and then that always going to create something else too. So
So that's an interesting point. I know we have like 2 minutes left. Like, do you think it would help sites if they use tools like clue points? Because it would
blue
also
points,
help with like the
yes. Like, but I don't think sites are in an interesting place where they're already short on cash. Like they're being told, hey, invest in community outreach, especially for minorities. So they're doing that a lot of times on their own dime, me on my own dime at my site.
yeah.
So how much more are we gonna put, out of our own dime into other tools that we think CROs are supposed to be doing because the incentives are also, remember, if sites are accruing, as long as you're not committing egregious deviations, you're getting repeat business from those sponsors. So there's not really an incentive for the sites either to focus on
Yeah.
quality. We're usually like, okay, the CRA is going to catch it, right? And we're not going to commit like ethical violations. We're, God forbid, like we're not reckless. But when it comes to like, okay, well, did protocol get compliance here? Well, out of window visit, okay, let the CRA catch it and we'll put we'll add it to the deviation log, right?
Yep.
But those things are going to compound as we compress timeline, and no one's really watching it because CRAs are supposed to, but CRAs are turning over all the time. And so you're left with ultimately it's the sponsor's problem. I think they're the ones paying for the whole thing.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Well, you know what, man, as always, it's 10:30 and I know that you've got, things to take care of and as
10:30
well.
on the West Coast.
Yeah. Yes, 10:30 on the West Coast.
Everybody
Yeah.
follow Damien's LinkedIn. He also has a entertaining Instagram. We're
Yeah.
connected there,
Yes.
Damien.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, give my guy Dan a follow here on LinkedIn. Also, he's got a great book out about clinical research, and if you get a chance at the next Save Our Sites symposium, please give it a check out. It's pretty informative, pretty awesome
We
stuff.
got to get you there, by the way. Next year's in Oklahoma City.
Oh, Oklahoma
Um,
City. Okay,
we got to
okay.
get you
See,
there on a panel. I will make sure of it because like we're trying for new panelists this time around and our first one that was like kind of rushed and we just lucky we pulled it off and it ended up being great. Now we got to repeat the success but also make it different and we need people like you, Damien, out there with a platform. I'm gonna reach out to you and get you there because
yeah. I
you
mean, and,
have to be
and
there,
like I
man.
said, I would, I'll support, anything that you're behind. And, I appreciate, like I said, this podcast is really just about saying thank you for what you do and what you continue to do, for people. I have colleagues that are like, yeah, I was reading this thing from this guy, Dan Fair. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, that's my guy. And they're like, it's almost like they're starstruck and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like you get the Michael Jackson effect, a little bit,
Man, it's
but
a lot of responsibility, but I'm just a side owner, man, trying to like blogging about what I'm going through and I call it how I see it and I don't have a CRO telling me you can't say this. Thank God, man. Thank God. Like I'm not at a big CRO where they would, I'm unemployable, Damien. In this industry, unless it's a tech vendor, like if I like can't figure out how to run a business, I gotta do something else, man. I don't think I'm around in this space, but God willing, it looks like I'm okay for now. So I'm just gonna keep doing what I gotta do, call it how I see it, try to treat people right. Not everyone's gonna be happy after interactions, but we're humans and, you know, try to do my best. That's all I can do and keep promoting people like you who are also I see cut from a similar cloth and doing the same thing.
yeah, man. Well, listen, yeah, like I said, I know you got to run. It's always, a real honor, when you carve out time for people like myself. And so, like I said, we'll continue to collaborate. And like I said, if you're watching this, please give my guy a follow here on LinkedIn or Instagram. And like I said, he's got some amazing work that he's doing in our industry. So,
Thank you,
if
Damien.
you
Well, same with Damien. His LinkedIn's underneath and in the show notes. Thank you very much, Damien. We'll do this again for sure very
Yeah,
soon. Like,
yeah.
subscribe, comment, share. We'll go live next time. LinkedIn Live's been down all day, so we didn't go live
Oh,
today. It's
I
been down
see.
all day on StreamYard. So we'll do it next time and we'll go like Q&A session with Damien, like a full
Great.
hour. We'll do that
All
soon.
right.
Like,
Sounds
subscribe,
like a
comment,
plan, bro.
share, Guru Nation. Go follow Damien right now. Bye bye.